For 50 long years, the galaxy burned with war. The Virellan Empire, a proud race of beings made of light and energy, fought endlessly against the expanding united human colonies. Planets turned to ash, fleets vanished into dark space. Every victory felt hollow because another battle always followed. The Virellans believed they were the oldest and brightest race in the stars. They saw themselves as bringers of order, beauty, and balance. To them, humans were rough creatures, emotional, unpredictable, and driven by stubborn will instead of reason. But even the Virellans grew tired of endless loss. Their empress, Serenia Virellan, looked upon her dying worlds and said, "Enough." Across the stars, human leaders also wanted peace. The war had brought nothing but graves, so both sides agreed to a treaty that would end the bloodshed. Yet the treaty needed more than signatures. It needed a bond that could never be broken. That bond was marriage, a royal union between the Virellan Empire and humanity. Between light and flesh, the chosen bride was Princess Aelira Virellan, the Empress's only daughter. She was tall, graceful, her skin faintly glowing like the moonlight over crystal seas. Trained in diplomacy since childhood, Aelira knew duty better than love. When she heard the plan, her voice was calm, but her eyes darkened. "You wish me to marry a human?" Her mother nodded. "It is the only way to show the galaxy we trust them." Aelira bowed her head, though her chest felt cold. "Then I will do it. For peace." The human chosen for this union was Captain Ethan Hayes, a war hero from the Terran fleet. His name was known among both humans and Virellans. He had led his fleet to defend refugee worlds instead of attacking enemy planets. Many saw him as the kind of human who fought for life, not conquest. When the Empress's envoys came to offer him the proposal, he hesitated. "Marriage?" he repeated, surprised. "To end a war." The human diplomat replied, "A symbol, Captain. One strong enough to hold the peace." Ethan was silent for a long time, then nodded. "If it helps end this, I'll do it." He never asked what the princess looked like. He only asked what kind of person she was. The diplomat said softly, "A woman of honor, but her heart is guarded." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I will walk carefully." The wedding was to take place on GalacticPrime, a world of glass spires and rivers that glowed with blue light. The entire galaxy watched through hollow feeds. For the first time in half a century, the flags of two great powers stood side by side. When Ethan's ship entered the Virellan atmosphere, he looked out the window. The sky shimmered like liquid silver and the city below pulsed with energy. He felt small, almost unworthy, yet calm. At the grand crystal steps of the celestial palace, Princess Aelira waited. Around her stood the royal court, shining like stars in living form. When Ethan appeared, every Virellan eye turned to him. He was only human, his skin pale, his body solid, no glow in his eyes. He walked with quiet steps, unafraid. His uniform was simple, navy blue with the insignia of peace embroidered in silver. He stopped before Aelira, bowed slightly, and said, "Your Highness, it's an honor." His voice was steady, respectful, without pride or fear. Aelira studied him for a moment. His face was weathered but kind. She had expected arrogance or nervousness, but instead found calm strength. "The honor is shared," she replied in a soft, formal tone. "May our union bring light where there was once darkness." The ceremony began beneath the twin suns of GalacticPrime, their rays casting colors across the palace dome. Both human and Virellan choirs sang, their voices blending in strange harmony. Aelira stood tall in a gown made of woven light. Ethan wore a ceremonial cloak gifted by the Virellan High Council. When their hands touched, the air shimmered. For a moment, light surrounded them both, a sign of acceptance by the Virellan spirits. Many gasped. The Empress spoke solemnly. "By light and by will, two become one. So may peace bind all who live under the stars." The words were ancient. The vow was real. The galaxy cheered, but Aelira's heart was uncertain. As the crowd roared and fireworks painted the skies, she looked at her new husband. He smiled politely, his blue eyes gentle but unreadable. She thought, "This man fought against my people. How can I trust him?" And yet something about him, his stillness, his warmth, felt different. When the ceremony ended, they walked side by side down the long crystal hall. Virellan nobles bowed as they passed, though some whispered softly behind glowing hands. "Darkborn," one murmured. "Emotion-bound," another said. "He has no light," a third sneered. Elira heard it all, but Ethan didn't react. He just walked calmly, his posture proud but humble. At last they reached the private garden behind the palace, a place of floating lilies and soft humming light. Elira turned to him. "You are not troubled by their words?" Ethan smiled faintly. "If peace depended on words, Princess, it would have ended long ago." His answer surprised her. "You speak wisely. For a soldier, I've seen too many people lose everything because they couldn't forgive," he said quietly. "I don't want that anymore." For a long moment they stood in silence. Around them, the garden glowed softly and twin moons rose above the horizon. Later that night, Elira stood on her balcony overlooking the shining city. The stars reflected in her silver eyes. She thought about the humans sleeping in the guest chambers below. Her duty was clear. She would be a symbol of peace. She would smile, speak politely, and fulfill her role. Nothing more. Yet her thoughts wandered back to the way Ethan had walked through the crowd, calm and steady. How he had bowed not out of fear but respect. It made her curious and uneasy. Her people called humans unpredictable, ruled by feelings rather than logic. But if that was true, then why did this one seem more controlled than half the glowing nobles of her court? She folded her hands and whispered to herself, "Perhaps peace is more complicated than I thought." Meanwhile, in his quarters, Ethan looked out at the alien skyline. The city pulsed with beauty, but it also felt cold. He touched the faint burn on his palm, the mark left from the energy during the marriage vow. It glowed weakly for a second, then faded. He wondered if that light meant something or if it was just ceremony. He had fought in 100 battles, seen entire planets crumble, yet somehow standing beside the luminous princess that day had felt like the most dangerous moment of his life. Not because she might hate him, but because for the first time in years, he wanted something fragile to survive. He wanted peace to last, and though he would never admit it aloud, a small spark inside him hoped that someday the princess would look at him, not as a soldier or symbol, but as something more. Far above, in the council chamber, Empress Serenia watched the stars and spoke softly to her advisors. "It is done," she said. "Light and flesh are joined. If the humans betray us again, they will destroy what their captain holds dearest." Her advisor asked carefully, "Do you not trust this human, Your Majesty?" The Empress's glow dimmed slightly. Trust is earned, not given. For now, he is a piece on the board. But deep inside, she wondered if perhaps this human, this quiet man with no glow, might change more than she expected. That night, under the twin moons of Virel Prime, two souls slept on the same world for the first time as husband and wife, bound not by love, but by duty. Neither knew what the future would bring. But the stars above burned brighter than usual, as if they already knew the truth, that peace was only the beginning, and that a human soul, once lit, could shine brighter than any star. The days after the royal marriage passed quietly on Virel Prime. From the outside, it looked like peace had already begun. The humans and Virellans finally smiled at each other on the streets. Traders returned to the space docks. Children played without fear of warships in the sky. But inside the celestial palace, things were far from calm. Princess Elira lived in one half of the palace, surrounded by glowing servants, musicians, and advisors who whispered about politics. In another wing, her new husband, Captain Ethan Hayes, lived as a guest, not a partner. He walked through endless corridors of crystal and light, always watched but rarely welcomed. The palace guards looked at him with curiosity. He was the only one without a glow. His steps echoed differently. His breath fogged the air where Virellans did not. He was human, and that word still carried weight. Ethan spent his mornings exploring the royal gardens where luminous flowers floated above silver ponds. He often sat under the shade of the lightroot tree, its leaves glowing in rhythm with the wind. He would sketch the view on his datapad, recording every curve and shadow. One afternoon, a servant, a young Virellan named Tyriel, approached him nervously. "Captain Hayes, the princess requests that you attend the evening council meeting," he said, bowing slightly. Ethan looked up. "She requested herself?" "Yes, Captain. It seems she wants you to represent the human colonies. Ethan nodded. Then I'll do my best not to embarrass her. When he arrived at the council chamber, he felt dozens of eyes on him. The chamber was filled with high nobles, figures of light in elegant robes. Their eyes shimmered like jewels, and at the head of the table sat Illyra, her expression calm but distant. "Captain Hayes," she said formally, "please take your place beside me." He bowed slightly and obeyed. The meeting began. The topic was reconstruction. How to rebuild war-torn worlds, how to share technology, how to handle refugees. Ethan listened quietly at first, observing the elegant but cold rhythm of their discussions. Finally, one noble turned toward him. "Captain Hayes," the glowing figure said, "humans have caused much destruction. Why should we trust your colonies with rebuilding efforts? You build with metal and fire, not with harmony." Ethan looked at him steadily. "Because, my lord, we rebuild what we destroy. It's what keeps us human." The room fell silent for a moment. Another noble muttered, "Such simple words." But Illyra watched him with slight surprise. His voice wasn't defensive or angry. It was calm, honest. Later, when the meeting ended, she stopped him in the hallway. "You spoke boldly," she said. "My people do not like to be challenged." "I didn't mean to challenge," Ethan replied. "I just told the truth. Peace can't last on pride alone." Illyra studied him for a moment. "You are different from the humans I've met." He smiled softly. "That might be because you've only met them during war." As days passed, Illyra began to notice small things about Ethan. He always rose before dawn, walking quietly through the halls while the palace still slept. He would stop to greet guards, gardeners, or even the cleaning drones. He thanked everyone, no matter how low their status. Virellans rarely thanked servants. It was considered unnecessary. But Ethan always did. He also worked in the palace repair bays, helping engineers fix damaged drones and energy grids. The Virellans were surprised to see a royal consort doing manual work. But when asked why, Ethan only said, "Hands build trust faster than words." One evening, Illyra passed by the repair bay and saw him helping a frightened young technician whose tool had malfunctioned. Ethan knelt beside her, calm and patient. "It's all right," he said gently. "Try again. I'll hold it steady." When the repair succeeded, the young technician smiled, her glow brightening. Illyra stood hidden in the shadows, watching the scene quietly. She did not understand why his calmness felt comforting, but peace never stays simple. One night the palace shook with a distant explosion. The alarms blared, a deep hum that made even the walls tremble. Illyra's guards rushed into her chamber. "Your Highness, rebels have attacked the southern wing." She froze. "Rebels?" "Yes, extremists who reject the treaty. They've planted bombs under the council hall." Illyra didn't hesitate. She ran into the corridor, her glow brightening as she summoned her energy shield. The air was thick with smoke and sparks. Crystals had shattered and flames flickered across the floor. She could hear screams. A large beam fell from the ceiling, blocking her path. She turned to find another route, but before she could move, the floor beneath her cracked. She stumbled and debris crashed down, trapping her leg. Pain shot through her. She tried to free herself, but the weight was too heavy. Smoke filled her lungs. The world began to blur, and then she heard a voice. "Hold on, princess." Through the fire, a shadow appeared, human, solid, unglowing, but moving fast. It was Ethan. He wore no armor, no shield, only a simple jacket and a determined look. He pushed through the flames, coughing, ignoring the heat. When he reached her, he grabbed the burning beam with both hands and lifted. His skin scorched, but he didn't stop. Illyra gasped. "You'll burn." "I've burned before," he said through clenched teeth, forcing the beam aside. He pulled her free and lifted her into his arms, carrying her through the collapsing corridor. The palace guards finally arrived, helping them out. Outside, the air was cool and clear again. Medics surrounded them, treating Illyra's injuries. Ethan's arms were covered with burns, his uniform blackened. But he refused to let the medics touch him until he was sure she was safe. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was his face covered in soot, eyes full of concern. "You're safe," he said quietly. She whispered weakly. "Why would you do that? You could have died," he smiled tiredly. "Because peace means nothing if we can't protect each other." Her lips parted slightly. No Virellan she had ever met would have spoken that way. That night, after the chaos had ended, Elira stood outside the medical chamber where Ethan rested. The doctors had treated his burns, but he slept deeply. His breathing was slow but strong. Through the glass wall she saw his hands bandaged but still twitching slightly, as if restless even in sleep. One of the medics approached her quietly. "He refused the regeneration pod, Your Highness. Said it should go to the wounded guards first." Elira's glow dimmed with emotion.
"He did?"
"Yes, Princess. He only asked if you were alive before resting." She turned back to the sleeping human. "Strange creature," she whispered softly. "You fight like a storm but speak like the calm that follows it." Later, when Ethan woke, Elira was sitting beside him. She looked tired, but her eyes held warmth. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I wrestled a starship," he joked weakly. Elira smiled for the first time. "You saved my life, Captain Hayes." "I only did what anyone should do," he replied. "No," she said quietly. "You did what few would. My people have always feared fire, but you ran through it without hesitation." Ethan looked at her carefully. "You have your light, Princess. I have my fire. Maybe peace needs both." She didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, seeing not the dark-skinned outsider her court whispered about, but a man whose soul glowed without light. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You're not like I thought, human." He smiled faintly. "Most of us aren't." That night, as the twin moons rose again, Elira stood on her balcony once more. Below her, the palace lay quiet, repaired, and peaceful again. But inside her, something had changed. She had seen courage before among soldiers and leaders, but never like his. His courage was not built from pride or power. It was quiet, honest, human. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Perhaps the fire within him burns brighter than our light." Far below, Ethan gazed from his chamber window, his bandaged hand resting on the glass. He didn't know she was watching the same stars, but somehow both felt the same silent connection, a warmth that crossed the cold distance between their worlds. That night, for the first time since the war ended, Elira dreamed not of battle but of hope, and in her dream, a human soul burned like a star, steady, bright, and unending. Weeks passed since the attack on the Celestial Palace. Repairs were nearly complete, but the air around the royal hall still carried a quiet tension. The explosion had reminded everyone that peace was fragile, like crystal under pressure. Princess Elira returned to her duties. Her days were filled with council meetings, reports, and endless diplomatic gatherings. Yet something had changed inside her since that night. Every time she walked through the halls, she saw the marks left by fire. And every time she saw them, she thought of Captain Ethan Hayes, the human who had run through those flames without fear. Ethan had recovered quickly. His burns were healing, though faint scars remained. He spent little time in the palace now. Instead, he worked at the Peace Command Center, helping organize reconstruction between human and Virellan fleets. Some Virellans still looked at him with suspicion, but others, especially the young officers, had begun to respect him. They said his bravery was more than duty. It was something deeper. When Elira passed through the command wing one afternoon, she saw him standing before a large holographic map, surrounded by Virellan captains. His voice was calm and steady. "We can't rebuild peace if we only protect our own worlds," he said. "If a colony cries for help, we go. Doesn't matter if they're human or Virellan." The captains nodded slowly. Even those who doubted humans felt the truth in his words. Elira watched from the doorway unseen. His presence filled the room like quiet fire. There was no arrogance in him, only focus, warmth, and a kind of strength that made others want to follow. When the meeting ended, she stepped forward. "Captain Hayes," she called softly. He turned and bowed politely. "Your Highness, I heard your plan. It was strong," she said, her tone measured. "You speak as though unity is simple." Ethan smiled faintly. "It isn't simple, Princess. It's just worth the effort." Elira tilted her head, studying him. "You believe in peace with such confidence. Do all humans think this way?" He chuckled lightly. "No, but we try. Some of us believe hope is stronger than fear." Her glow flickered slightly, something close to emotion. "Strange. My people believe light brings wisdom, yet you speak as if light comes from the heart." "Maybe," Ethan said quietly. "That's where it really begins." A few days later, the Galactic Council sent a message to both empires. A pirate fleet had appeared in the outer sectors, raiding supply routes and capturing civilian ships. It was a joint problem, threatening both Virilan and human territories. A mission was proposed, a combined task force, half human, half Virilan, to hunt down and stop the pirates. The Empress selected Princess Illyra to lead the diplomatic side. The human colonies requested Captain Ethan Hayes to command the defense. When the Empress told her daughter, Illyra's calm mask slipped for a moment. "You want me to serve beside him again?" The Empress's eyes glowed softly. "Yes, the galaxy watches us, child. You are the symbol of peace. And Captain Hayes, he is your other half in that symbol." Illyra hesitated. Then she bowed her head. "Very well, Mother. I will do my duty." The journey to the border systems took 4 days aboard the human flagship Resolute. It was Ethan's ship, built with both human steel and Virilan energy tech, a symbol of unity. Illyra had never traveled on a human vessel before. The corridors felt darker, warmer, and alive with sound, crews talking, laughing, working. The air smelled of metal and oil instead of polished crystal. It was strange, but somehow comforting. As she walked through the ship, she saw the human crew saluting Ethan with respect. He greeted each of them by name, always smiling. When one young ensign dropped a datapad in nervousness, Ethan bent down and helped her pick it up. Illyra blinked. "You do not act like a royal commander," he grinned. "That's because I'm not royal. I'm just human," she frowned slightly. "Among my people, leaders are meant to inspire from above." He looked around the ship. "Maybe, but we believe real leaders walk beside their people." For the first time, she understood something about humanity that no treaty had explained. They led not by command, but by connection. When the Resolute reached the edge of the Carolus Belt, they found the pirate fleet waiting, 12 ships armed with stolen weapons. The joint task force prepared for battle. Virilan ships glowed like stars, moving in graceful patterns. Human ships formed tight, solid lines, less elegant but strong and precise. From the bridge, Illyra watched as Ethan gave orders. His voice was calm, confident, and filled with quiet fire. "Keep shields high," he said. "No one fires first unless they attack." The pirates, however, had no interest in peace. Energy beams cut through space, striking one of the Virilan escorts. The explosion lit up the darkness. Ethan didn't hesitate. "All units return fire, but protect the civilians first." The battle began. Illyra could feel the ship tremble as weapons fired. Outside, the stars flashed with blue and orange light. She watched in awe as Ethan worked, moving between crew stations, giving calm orders even as alarms blared. He didn't shout or panic. His presence anchored the entire crew. When a pirate ship tried to flank them, he called, "Helm, drift turn starboard." "Tactical. Concentrate fire on their engines, not their core. We're not here to kill, we're here to stop them." His restraint impressed Illyra deeply. Humans had once been known for their fierce aggression. Yet this man fought with control, not chaos. The battle lasted an hour. When it ended, the pirate ships were disabled or fleeing. No civilians were lost. The joint fleet stood victorious. On the bridge, the crew cheered. Ethan let out a slow breath. "Good work, everyone. Signal the survivors, we'll bring them in. No one gets left behind." Illyra turned to him. "You fought with mercy." He looked at her seriously. "Mercy is the hardest kind of strength, Princess." Her glow softened. "My people believe mercy is a weakness," he smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why the universe gave you light, to balance our fire." Illyra didn't reply. Her gaze lingered on him longer than she meant to. Later, when the battle was over and the ships were in repair mode, Illyra and Ethan stood together in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, calm once more. Ethan leaned on the railing. "Do you know what I used to think before all this?" Illyra turned to him. "What?" "That peace was something made by leaders. Treaties, laws, signatures." He shook his head. "Now I think peace starts with people who choose to see each other differently." Illyra looked at him quietly. "You make it sound so simple." He smiled softly. "Simple things are often the hardest to keep." They stood there in silence, watching the stars. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, Illyra said in a gentle voice, "When I first met you, I thought humans were creatures of chaos, ruled by their emotions." Ethan chuckled. "You're not wrong, we are." "But emotions aren't only chaos. Sometimes they're what push us to do the right thing." She tilted her head, studying him. "You are very strange, Captain Hayes," he grinned. "I've been told that before." Elira smiled faintly, a rare warmth touching her eyes. When they returned to Virel Prime days later, the Galactic Council sent messages of praise. The mission was declared a success. Peace between their races had grown stronger. In the palace courtyard, the Empress herself welcomed them back. "You have done well, both of you," she said proudly. "The galaxy now sees that unity is possible." Elira bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Mother." But as Ethan turned to leave, the Empress stopped him. "Captain Hayes," she said, "my daughter has spoken highly of your actions. I thank you for protecting her." Ethan bowed humbly. "I only did my duty, Your Majesty." The Empress smiled faintly, but her eyes searched his face as if looking for something deeper. When he was gone, Elira stood silently beside her mother. "You care for that human, don't you?" the Empress asked softly. Elira's glow flickered. "I respect him, Mother. That is all." The Empress smiled knowingly. "Respect is where understanding begins." Elira turned her gaze toward the stars where the human fleet was already vanishing into light. She whispered to herself, "He carries fire within him, and I think I am beginning to feel its warmth." That night, for the first time, the Princess of Light dreamed of a human flame, burning not to destroy, but to protect, and in that dream, peace no longer felt like duty. It felt like hope. Peace, once bright and hopeful, began to show cracks. Though the treaty had been signed and the pirate threat eliminated, not all Virelans were content. Some nobles, proud and stubborn, murmured that humans were untrustworthy. They believed a single hero could not secure centuries of peace. Princess Elira could feel the tension in the palace corridors. Whispers followed her wherever she went, questioning her judgment, her loyalty, even her marriage. "They say he's dangerous," one courtier whispered, her hands glowing nervously. "His kind cannot be trusted," another said, voice trembling with fear. Elira ignored them, mostly, but even she could not dismiss the feeling that the fragile peace might collapse at any moment. And then came the summons. The Galactic Council demanded a formal demonstration of trust between humans and Virelans. A joint mission was proposed. Travel to the Outer Rim to mediate a dispute between two neutral colonies before it escalated into war. Both Elira and Captain Ethan Hayes were chosen to lead the mission together. In the council chamber, Elira's mother, Empress Serenia, watched her daughter carefully. "Do not let your heart cloud your duty, Elira," she said softly. "Humans are unpredictable. Your bond with him could be dangerous." Elira bowed. "I understand, Mother," but deep inside she could feel the same warmth that had grown since the battle with the pirates. She did not yet trust her heart completely, but it was waking. Ethan, for his part, prepared quietly. He knew the mission would not be easy. He had seen diplomacy fail before. Yet for the first time, he felt that he was not facing the galaxy alone. The journey to the Outer Rim took several days aboard the human flagship Resolute, with Elira traveling as both a diplomat and as witness to the human way of leadership. On the bridge, Elira noticed how smoothly Ethan moved. He did not shout, he did not panic. He communicated calmly, clearly, and the crew responded with total confidence. "You seem unshakable," she remarked quietly as she watched him issue orders. Ethan glanced at her. "A leader's job is to steady others, Princess. If you falter, so will everyone else. I've learned that the hard way." Elira thought about her own people. Virelans ruled with authority and brilliance, but their temper and pride sometimes caused chaos. This human, he inspired without force. "Perhaps this is why peace feels possible with you," she murmured. Ethan smiled faintly, though his eyes remained on the hollow map. "Maybe. Or maybe it's because we both want it to last." When they arrived at the neutral colonies, the situation was tense. Two neighboring worlds, once allies, had a long-standing dispute over trade routes and energy fields. Arguments had escalated to small skirmishes. War seemed imminent. Elira and Ethan were escorted to the council chamber between the two worlds. Virelans regarded humans with skepticism, and the human delegates bristled at the sight of glowing aristocrats. Elira stepped forward. "We are here to help you find a solution," she said firmly. Her words carried authority, but she noticed the humans were watching Ethan more than her. Ethan stood beside her. Peace requires listening first, then action. He spoke gently, but every word held weight. Slowly, the council members leaned in. They wanted to understand, not just be told. Over the next several hours, Elira watched Ethan negotiate. He did not dominate. He did not threaten. He asked questions, he understood fears, and he offered solutions that were fair to all. At one point, the elder of the Virellan-aligned colony challenged him. Humans always take what they want, he said, his glow dimming slightly with anger. How can we trust your words? Ethan's eyes softened, but he did not retreat. We take only what is fair. That is all. The elder hesitated. No human had ever stood with such calm conviction in front of a Virellan noble. He looked at Ethan not with fear, but with a hint of respect. Elira realized then what she had begun to understand. Humans did not rely on power alone. They relied on will, courage, and honesty. The negotiations lasted through the night. Elira grew tired, but she stayed beside Ethan, observing how he worked. Finally, the council reached an agreement. Shared energy fields, open trade, and mutual protection against outside threats. War had been avoided. The delegates shook hands. Even the most skeptical Virelans admitted the human captain had been instrumental in achieving this peace. Elira looked at him, feeling a strange warmth. You make peace seem easier than it is, Ethan chuckled. It isn't easy. It's just worth it, she nodded, understanding. His fire, steady, patient, and unwavering, had not only saved this mission, but also begun to change her perception of humans entirely. The return journey to Virel-Prime, however, brought danger. A rogue faction of Virelans, furious about the concessions made to humans, launched a sudden attack on the Resolute. Ships struck from hidden positions in the asteroid field. Alarms blared. Lights flashed. Elira's glow flared in instinctive defense, forming shields across the deck. She watched Ethan coordinate the human crew, issuing precise commands. One ship, larger and faster than the rest, barreled toward them. Ethan leapt to a control panel and guided the Resolute into a narrow pass between asteroids. The larger vessel followed. Elira realized then that he was not only brave but brilliant in strategy. His mind worked as fast as his courage burned. When the rogue ship fired a beam toward the bridge, Ethan moved to intercept it with the ship's energy shield. Sparks flew. Systems flickered. The deck shook violently. Elira's hands glowed, but she hesitated. His calm focus grounded her. She realized she could trust him, even in the face of imminent danger. After a tense chase, the rogue faction retreated. No lives were lost, and the Resolute sustained only minor damage. When the ship finally entered orbit above Virel-Prime, Elira and Ethan stood together on the bridge. Both were exhausted, yet neither spoke immediately. Finally, Elira said quietly, "You're calm. It is frightening at times. How do you do it?" Ethan looked out at the glowing planet below. "I do it because people depend on me, and because fear only weakens the flame inside. I cannot let that happen." Her eyes softened. "Your flame, it is unlike anything I have ever seen. Not like Virellan light, stronger, wiser, alive." He turned to her, faintly smiling. "It's a human fire. Simple, stubborn, sometimes reckless, but it burns for others, not just for me." Elira's heart skipped a beat. She realized then that she had begun to see humans in a new light. Not as primitive or dangerous, but as capable of greatness beyond expectation. The next day, in the palace courtyard, the Empress greeted them. "You have done well," she said, her glow bright with pride. "The Council reports that your combined effort has restored confidence in the treaty." Elira bowed. "Thank you, Mother. But I did little compared to Captain Hayes." Ethan shook his head. "It was our work together, Princess. That is the truth." The Empress studied him closely, as if searching for hidden motives. Finding none, she finally nodded. "Perhaps humans have more to offer than I expected." Elira looked at Ethan from the corner of her eye. His presence no longer seemed alien or distant. She could feel the warmth of his soul, steady and strong. For the first time, she wondered not about duty alone, but about what it meant to truly care for another being. That night, she sat by the palace balcony, gazing at the twin moons rising. The wind carried the faint hum of the city below. Her thoughts returned to Ethan's fire. She whispered softly to herself, "Perhaps duty led me to him, but now I cannot ignore what I feel. And somewhere in the city below, Ethan looked out at the same moons. Though he did not know she was watching, he thought quietly, "Peace is fragile, but fire and light together, maybe that is stronger than anything I have seen." Peace had returned to the galaxy, but it was fragile, held together by trust and hope. For Princess Elira and Captain Ethan Hayes, life had begun to settle into routine. She attended council meetings. He oversaw human and virulent fleet operations. Yet the bond between them had grown deeper. Not spoken aloud, not declared in ceremony, but unmistakable. They trusted each other. That trust, however, was about to be tested. A sudden alert rang through the palace and the Resolute. An ancient alien fleet, long thought dormant, had emerged from beyond the outer veil, a dark expanse at the edge of the galaxy. Their ships were enormous, armed with technology neither humans nor Virellans fully understood. They had begun capturing colonies, stripping resources, and leaving devastation in their wake. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Leaders from across the galaxy gathered, their voices tense with fear. "This is unlike any threat we've seen," said a human admiral. "Our fleets are no match," said a Virelan noble. Elira stood beside Ethan. "Then we must find another way," she said softly. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "If we wait for others to act, entire worlds will burn. We must strike together. Humans, Virellans, and every ally willing to fight for life." Elira realized then the full weight of the human fire she had seen before. It was not only courage, it was determination that could ignite hope in others. They gathered a combined fleet, smaller than the alien armada, but united in purpose. Virellan ships glowed brightly, humans maneuvered with precision, and Elira's presence as a symbol of peace kept morale high. Before the battle, she approached Ethan in the ship's bridge. "Are you certain we can do this?" she asked, her glow soft but anxious. He turned to her, calm and steady.
"I've seen impossible things become possible."
"We have to try, and we'll face it together." Elira felt warmth in her chest, fear, yes, but also trust. She nodded. Together then, the battle began in the void of space. The alien ships were massive, firing energy beams that could shatter a planet's crust. The human Virellan fleet dodged and returned fire. Explosions flared like miniature suns against the darkness. Elira's heart pounded as she directed shields and coordinated communications. Yet her gaze constantly returned to Ethan. He moved like a storm contained in calm, the fire in him burning brightly but under complete control. When an alien cruiser targeted the Resolute, Ethan acted without hesitation. "Divert shields to starboard." "Prepare counterfire!" The ship trembled as the alien beam struck. Sparks flew. Crew members shouted, but Ethan remained steady, his orders clear, concise, and unwavering. Elira watched him and thought, "This is the human soul, like fire held inside the hands of someone who knows its worth." The fight escalated. Alien ships adapted quickly, anticipating maneuvers, forcing the fleet into tighter formations. One massive vessel broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Virellan command ships. "The situation looked dire. Princess!" Ethan shouted. "We can't let them reach the command center. I need you with me." Elira's glow flared. "I'm coming." Together, they piloted the Resolute closer to the enemy. Elira projected energy shields around the human vessel, deflecting beams and protecting nearby allies. Ethan maneuvered the ship with extraordinary skill, dodging debris, countering attacks, and striking at weak points of the alien fleet. In that moment, Elira saw the full truth she had been realizing over weeks. Humans did not rely on light to show strength. They relied on heart, determination, and a fire that refused to die. The battle reached its climax near a collapsing asteroid field. One alien battleship cornered the Resolute. "Ethan!" Elira shouted. "We can't outrun it." He looked at her, his eyes burning with determination. "Then we fight. Together." They coordinated every maneuver, using the asteroid debris to their advantage. Elira's shields shone brilliantly, absorbing energy strikes. Ethan's hands flew over controls, predicting enemy patterns and issuing commands that synchronized human and Virellan ships. At the critical moment, Ethan fired the ship's main energy pulse directly into the alien battleship's core. A shockwave erupted, sending debris flying. The alien vessel's energy systems overloaded, and it disintegrated in a brilliant flash. The fleet cheered. The tide of the battle had turned. Even so, the victory was not easy. Several smaller ships continued to attack and casualties mounted. Elira turned to Ethan. "We can't stop now. We have to protect the colonies." He nodded, his fire burning steadily. "Then let's finish this. For every life that depends on us." Together they led the fleet in a final coordinated strike, targeting alien supply lines and command hubs. The alien armada, unprepared for such unity, began to retreat into the dark void from which it came. At last, the battlefield fell silent. The stars reflected in the debris of destroyed alien ships like diamonds scattered in space. After the battle, Elira and Ethan stood on the bridge, surveying the aftermath. Ships from both races were damaged, but survivors were accounted for. Colonies that would have burned now remained intact. Elira's glow was soft but steady. She turned to Ethan. "I see it now, your fire. Not for destruction, but for life." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's only fire if you let it burn for something worth protecting." Her chest felt warm. She reached out and touched his hand. "I understand why the galaxy needed you, and why I needed to see it with my own eyes." He looked at her, quietly understanding the depth of her words. The bond between them, once formal and duty-bound, had now become something unspoken but undeniable. In the days that followed, the galaxy celebrated. News of the human-Virellan alliance and their shared victory spread across stars. The treaty grew stronger. Distrust faded, replaced by cautious hope. Elira and Ethan were honored together, not only as symbols of peace, but as leaders who had lived the values they spoke of. The Empress, observing them from the celestial palace, said softly to her advisors, "Perhaps I underestimated humans, and perhaps I underestimated him, Elira." Meanwhile, often sought Ethan's presence, not out of duty, but out of a growing warmth that she could no longer deny. One quiet night, after the celebrations had ended, Elira stood on her balcony. The twin moons reflected in her silver eyes. Below, the city of GalacticPrime shimmered with calm light. Ethan approached, his steps quiet. "Princess," he said softly. "Captain," she replied, though the formal title felt unnecessary. He stood beside her, looking at the stars. "The galaxy feels different now, brighter, stronger, safer." Elira nodded. "Because your fire burns not for yourself, but for everyone." Ethan turned to her, his eyes reflecting moonlight and determination. "And because your light guided me, Princess. You showed me that fire and light together can change worlds." For the first time, Elira let herself smile fully, not as a princess, not as a diplomat, but as someone who had come to trust, admire, and perhaps even care deeply for the man beside her. "I see it now," she whispered. "Your soul, it burns like a star, bright, unyielding, and alive. And it has lit something in me too." Ethan reached for her hand. "Then let's make sure it keeps burning. Together." The galaxy watched as the human and Virellan alliance flourished. Colonies rebuilt, trade returned, and fleets patrolled not to conquer but to protect. Stories of courage, honor, and unity spread across worlds. And through it all, Princess Elira and Captain Ethan Hayes walked side by side, one of light, the other of fire, proving that true peace could only exist when heart, courage, and hope stood together. In the quiet moments, Elira often remembered the first time she saw the human run through flames to save her. She had once thought his courage was reckless. Now she understood. His soul had burned like a star, steady and bright, and she had been lucky enough to see its full brilliance. In the end, it was not the treaties, not the armies, not the councils that saved the galaxy. It was the fire within a human, the light within a princess, and their willingness to burn together for the sake of peace. The stars above the twin moons shone brighter than ever that night. And below, two souls united by duty and choice looked to the future with hope.